Welcome to the Red Letters Podcast. In this podcast, we explore topics that can be life-transforming while delivering a message of hope.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Red Letters Podcast. We don't typically do this, but we were starting a discussion and we actually felt like we should pause the discussion and hit record because I think there's going to be something inspiring, something that can motivate you to get closer to God. And even, maybe you're going through a time where you just, maybe a time of unsettling. So with that, Mary was sharing a story with us. So we'll start off with that and just see where this topic goes.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Tony. So I was basically sharing with you guys, faith. I believe that I have a lot of faith. I really believe in God. However, and I didn't want to put a but there because there is no but. I do believe in him. This last week, I just decided, okay, I'm going to buy a car. I need to buy a car. I didn't realize how expensive everything is. I do obviously know that everything's expensive, but once you're out there, I'm questioning myself, why did you even want a Lexus? What happened to you? What's wrong with you, Mary? Because they're nice, but I don't know. I sit back now. I don't know if it's the age or the wisdom or a combination, but I look to see what makes sense for my family. But my husband, who goes to church but doesn't hardly ever speak, has this, I don't know if it's faith or what it is with him, but he's like, Mary, we can do it. Quit having doubt. Let's just move forward and do it. But for me, I'm like, no, I want to look at everything in front of me. I need to make sure I look at the budget. I like, how is this going to work? I listened to what I said earlier, Dave Ramsey, and how he talks about assets versus investments. I'm like, this is such a big buy. Why would I do that? Why would I get myself into something like this? So that was basically what I was saying. But where is my faith? Do you guys think it's a question of faith, or is it really, what do you guys think?
Well, I think with what you're sharing right now regarding a car, I think two things. One, you're kind of common sense. You're evaluating everything. You're kind of logically putting in place, can we really afford this? Does it make sense? Is it right for us right now? Mm-hmm. How's it going to benefit us if we purchase it? Whereas let's say you have the money, right? And now you're doubting and you're worrying about getting it because, what ifs might happen, right? Right. So I think the question is, which is it? Is it because logically you're looking at, is it going to benefit us? Do we really need it right now? Is it just a want versus a need? Or is it something that you have the funds there and maybe you just want to, purchase something and have it, splurge,
Yeah.
So which would it be?
So we do need it. We do need it because I do. My husband has to use his to go to work. Nick has started working, so he wants his car back. So I was like, okay, but I don't want. I have it, but I don't want to make. I think it's just too much. I look at it. I was like, this is a lot, and I didn't realize that payments on cars were $500 to $700, and people were telling me like, Mary, that's the norm. I'm like, what happened? Where have I been? Because the last time I bought a car, it was in 2013, and it was not that, we were not paying that much. I paid like $300 and something, but now you take into consideration the insurance and the car, and now you're looking at $800 a month, which is doable, but it just seems so out there for me. I don't know. And I don't think it's a poor man mentality, but I'm like, why does it seem so outrageous for me? And my sister, I talked to her too, and she's like, I don't know what's wrong with you. It's doable. And I don't know why you're overthinking, especially because you need it. And then I love my sister. I hope she doesn't listen to this. But she's like, but you deserve it. You work so hard. But it's like, it's not about deserving. It's about what's logic, what's right. And then she'll always throw in, but Mary, you believe in God. He'll always provide. So they was like, okay, where's my faith? So that's why I go back. And the reason I wanted to share this, and I'm glad we're on air, because I believe a lot of people go through this. I believe in God. I do have faith. But then you have these other questions because in reality, you're seeing what's before you. And so I don't know. That's why.
Well, with me, I kind of, we were actually talking about a similar thing real soon, thinking about whether we should buy another car or if we should spend a little bit of money that it needs to actually get fixed up because something's kind of going wrong with it. So we were just talking about that. But one of the filters that I tend to use, and I don't know, I know I used it like a while, like when I did a lot of purchasing. I think in one year we bought like 3 vehicles at the same year because of the business. But like even when I bought the Yukon at the time, it was brand new. I could have afforded probably any vehicle I wanted at the time because money was really coming in then. And even the guy that works for me was like, why don't you get the Escalade? Why don't you get this? And inside I was like, I know me and I'm okay with the Yukon. Yeah. I could get the more extravagant thing and a nicer thing, but I'm looking at who I am and I'm actually comfortable with the purchase I'm making. Yeah. So it wasn't that I couldn't afford it or I didn't trust God, but I was just trying to, one, that meets the need and it actually supersedes the need, but I don't need to go overboard. Right. So there is, I think, a logic side of it. I know that there's a faith side of it, but at the end of the day now, like when we had the discussion, about thinking about buying another vehicle, it's funny that that's a topic you brought up. Is that now I'm actually looking at, okay, do I really want that payment?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it
me.
is.
That's
do
me.
I really want the payment? Yeah, I believe God. I know I can make the payment, but I don't know if I really want to pay that much every month for what I would be getting. Yeah. So then that to me becomes a factor. Mm-hmm. And it's not a question of if God's going to come through. It's just me personally, do I actually want to be writing a check or, sending out that much money a month? In light of everything else that I'm doing, does that make sense to me? So I think the answer actually would be wisdom. Yeah. We haven't mentioned that word yet, but that's, to me, when we go before God, we need to ask him for wisdom. And that was, I think, that's one of the biggest highlights of King Solomon, is that ever since I heard as a new convert that this young guy was going to turn around and take over the kingdom of David. Right. And he goes before God, and that's the biggest need that he had. God, give me wisdom to rule your people. Exactly. And ever since he captured my heart once I heard that. Then you start reading Proverbs and all the stuff that he wrote. I'm like, man, this guy learned a lot. And he said that like knowledge is like vanity because you could just get so headstrong. But wisdom is the beginning of the fear of the Lord. Right. You know what I mean? So that's where I think wisdom, whatever your decision is, if you know that the wisdom of God is leading you, you'll always be okay. Right. And that's where it's almost like you get your faith, you get your logic, you get all that put in the blender, and God, let wisdom come out of here and speak to me. Yeah. And then you're able to process things through the right filter, and then let's just say fast forward to 6 months later, you're not making a decision that you regret. Right. And many times we'll do that by impulse. Yes. And, even like, I think we might have shared this on an earlier podcast, but I know that my uncle is the one that taught me this, the one that I mention most of the time. But he turned around and he had said, whenever you're going to go buy a vehicle, leave your money at home. Oh, wow. Yeah. And it didn't make sense initially, but I've totally fell in love with that principle because then you're not going to be able to make your decision based on emotion. You have to drive back and actually have that cool down time to go get your money, leave your credit card, whatever you're going to use to buy it, or your down payment, whatever. Make sure you have to go back. And if you have to sleep on it, and there's a sales principle, they call it, for salespeople. They always use this tactic called fear of loss. They want you to make sure that you're going to fear losing out on a deal. Yeah. And that's the biggest tactic that they use. Mm-hmm. And after my uncle told me that, I learned that tactic. And I'm like, wow, now I see, said the blind man. But that helped me so much because when you have to reflect, that's where the wisdom, I think, starts to kick in, because then your emotions get kind of put on the shelf for the moment until you get back to, do I really need to do this? Yeah. Or I'm going to sleep on it on purpose. And if the deal's not there, then the deal's not there. I'm not going to live in fear that this is the only day God's going to bless me.
Yeah.
I choose not to participate in that way of thinking.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And speaking of that way of thinking, I was, so we went and test drove cars already, and we didn't take anything. Like, don't even take your ID. Don't take nothing. Nothing. I was like, there's no way. They can drive the car. We'll just sit in there. But we didn't take anything. And I remember when we were driving home, we were already going home. He's like, what do you think? What did you think? And I just really thought, I don't know if you guys have driven a Lexus, but it was like too much car for me. I was like, I don't need that fancy stuff. But compared to other cars, they're the same price, almost the same price. But I said, God, there's a verse that says, I know that many are the plans of a man. And I said, God, these were my plans, but I never sat down and asked you what your plans for me were. And once again, I think like, oh, it's just a car, Mary. It's not a big deal. No, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal because it's a huge investment. But I did that, and I think I felt better. Like, I'm not rushing out there on emotion, Tony. Like, I want it, and nobody can tell me no. And I want it. I deserve it. No, it's I'm just sitting back and allowing God to do what he needs to do. And it's like, these were my plans. And that's what I sat there last night. I was like, these were my plans, God. I really wanted this, but I didn't include you. I just figured you were already there. So now I'm just taking a step back, and I'm just going to allow him to guide me. And if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, then it's not meant to be. This is not the right time. And I'm okay with that.
Well, I think it's actually a beautiful thing that you realize that, because a lot of people don't realize that God wants to be a part of those everyday decisions. Like he wants to be there every step of the, for everything. And I think I wish I had your husband's faith at the time, because me and Jess actually went through the same thing when we were looking at getting a car for Jess. And we went to the dealer, and it was like $500 a month, not even including the insurance and stuff. And I was like discouraged, and I was like, I don't think this is smart. And my wife, she's here right now, and she has a really good head on her shoulders, and we both agreed on it. But I feel like what my dad was saying, like, there's wisdom, and I think the only thing I would have to add is I wouldn't not do it out of fear because of the payment, because then you give the enemy leverage to walk over you later on. So I think that's the only thing, is don't do it out of fear, because God, I know he has your back, and especially if you have a relationship and you're cultivating something beautiful with God. It's not like him to give you a rock when you're hungry, Jesus talks about that. Right. But that's the only thing I was adding about the fear.
That's so good. Yeah.
Well, another thing too, in the decision-making process, especially with the car, is a lot of people will just have a vehicle that they're dead set on. But sometimes, like I've learned now, is I kind of look at the reviews of the vehicles too ahead of time. So I just wanted to throw that in just so that it's not impulse. Yeah. And I do love what Gio just said, because you could have fear both ways. Exactly. So I think that we have to submit it, and see where the Lord leads us. Right. You know what I mean? But it is amazing to be able to involve him. That's so true. Yeah.
Not only that, I think that when there's a genuine need, God says that he's going to provide for our needs no matter what, right? And when you mentioned worry earlier, I said it's easy for us to worry about our finances. Even sometimes when we know we're going to be good, you worry. Because you never know of the what ifs, the unseen, what's going to happen tomorrow, we don't know. And worry brings in doubt. Yeah. And one of the things, and I was reminded of, was in Matthew, when Jesus was feeling hungry and he wanted the fig from the fig tree, remember? Yeah. And he walked by and the fig tree was completely barren. Yeah. So he cursed the fig tree, and his disciples right away said, whoa, they were like amazed, like astonished. And then all of a sudden, like, what happened, And Jesus told him, he says, he goes, if you have faith and you don't doubt, right? So yeah. What you saw me do, you can do too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But even more things you're going to do. Yeah. And I think when it comes to finances, I'm really good with not worrying. Oh, good. Like, I think he worries quicker than I do. Like he's very logical. But I think in my relationship with God, I've gotten to a confident place that I genuinely believe that we're always good when it comes, like, I don't allow worry when it comes to finances or anything. If anything, so I get angry when he starts worrying and doubting, because it's almost like when he starts sharing that with me, I'm like, you know, I was okay. Believe we're going to be okay, right? Because I believe 100% because I stand on that promise. And I've gotten it not just in my head, but it's in my heart now. It's bedded in my heart that I believe and I trust God in that area. Right. But when it comes to my kids, I'm that double-minded person because now I worry and I struggle when God's always saying, hello, trust me.
Yeah,
you know,
you trust me in this.
right.
Trust me
and
in
he
that.
has
Okay.
to always remind me, and he reminds me of all the seasons and all the times that he came through for us, like those miracle moments where, like, remember you were going through this financially and out of the blue, you know, the money came in right when you needed it. You know, just different things that he did for us that were way greater and bigger than what I'm worrying about or thinking about. So he says, if you can trust me here, then why can't you trust me in this? And so that's my little bit of struggles right now, where I just have to continually, daily believe and trust God that my kids,
They're going to be
going to be good.
Yeah.
You know?
And I'm glad we're having this conversation for the listener, because a lot of, I think, and I love that Gio chimed in because his spouse is also here. But I think a lot of people don't think about that, Tony, the importance of talking to each other. Yeah, we have to be in accord, like whatever we're going to do, because even if it's something small, we need to share that with I think it's better. It builds the relationship. Yeah. So just for the listener out there, women who love their shoes, I'm like, I'm gonna go get me another pair of shoes. It's like, if it's not in the budget, I don't think we should. Oh, I used to do that. So now that's what I was saying. Now I'm that type of person, like, wait, we got to see, do we need this? Is this a need or a want? And my husband, with everything, he's like, we know what it's like not to have anything, like to constantly struggle. We're not there anymore. And my husband's like, he's, like I said, he says, I think he has faith, or I don't know, but he says stuff like, as long as I can work, we're always going to be okay. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I don't like that kind of work. I don't like the physical work. I like God's work. Send me out there. I don't know. It's a little bit more challenging, but the physical stuff to me, I think seems a little far-fetched.
Yeah. Well, just to add a little bit to what my wife was saying about, like, when she has faith for finances and stuff like that. I'm not going to even say that it's to the level of her, but a lot of times she'll present something and tell me how she feels it's going to work and all this other stuff. But I always say, Kate, can you just put it on paper first? Because I don't mind the stretching of faith, the trusting God part, but I still have to see a little bit of the logic side, and it doesn't have to fully make sense, but I have to at least see it on paper so that my mind could process what we're about to do. So it's not really that I doubt all the time, but I just need to see it. And it's weird. I'm famous for telling her, can you please write that down? Send me a text, whatever, so that I could go back and process that so that I'll know how to move forward. Because like sometimes people function with the red light or a green light. I'm cool with the yellow light. Like if it's just wait a little bit, you know what I mean? But one other thing I wanted to add too, regarding like finances, I guess you could say, or worrying about some of these things that we're talking about, is I had a conversation with our pastor maybe 4 months ago. And lately, but like 2 weeks ago, it kind of got brought back up to me, the conversation. One of the things within the conversation I was talking to him about is I said, you know, Pastor, I said, I'm realizing that my creative side and or my wanting to dream about things again, I'm feeling like it's lost a little bit. Because I feel like I'm more on my logical side and not so much on my creative side of the brain, how you have the two different sides. So I'm on the analytical side and not on the creative side. And I was realizing probably like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that, and I felt like God was showing me part of the reason why I was struggling in that area It's because of the residue of the pandemic.
Oh,
And I was like, what?
Oh my gosh, there it goes. It hit me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is.
No,
with me too.
and it was like the light turned on.
Yeah.
And I was like, even though we're not in a pandemic anymore, for the older ones that actually felt it, because some younger kids don't know.
Especially business owners. A lot of
Exactly.
doors had to be closed. Yeah.
So it's residue from that time frame that reprogrammed your brain on what level of faith and all
You're
this kind of
operating
stuff.
on. Oh, that makes
and so
sense.
the light turned on, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, God, you're right." Like before that, I had faith for all kinds of stuff and dreaming and all this, and after that, I noticed I'm not dreaming as much. And I'm like, wow, I need to address this within my own walk with God to get that. And no, I'm not going to participate in that no more. But it had an impact on it. That's why even like the car payments, I was like, initially, let's just fix the car. I don't want a payment. I don't want to feel like I was going through the pandemic again. So I know we're years out of it, but that doesn't mean our mindset's years ahead of it.
And especially because everything we're hearing, like in the media, like, oh, this is going to happen or that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I didn't think it had impacted me until right this moment. Like it hit me. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe that is because my husband couldn't go to work. So it was just my income coming in.
Yeah.
And he was hiding to do haircuts. I don't know if we can still get in trouble for it, but he was doing something. I was like, what are we doing?
It's a needed business.
Yeah, but I didn't think about it till actually right now because the field that I work in, I also met a young man who was doing really great, had a great job and everything. He got sick. And he got sick. He lost his paycheck and then lost his house and then lost everything. I'm like, one paycheck, like this can happen. And almost like reality sits in, like, wait, you got to be careful. So I think I allowed the fear to kind of like be speaking for me or thinking for me. Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Yeah.
Hopefully it helps somebody.
Yeah, hopefully it helps somebody. Yeah.
Y'all are sharing your car story, so I'll share mine. I only have one. Because I personally didn't want to buy my car when I got it. I was forced to buy it because my car was totaled because someone hit it while it was parked and it was destroyed. And I remember I was dreading it. So I had my insurance gave me the rental car and they're like, you have like 30 days or something like that with it. I waited past the 30 days and some because I was like, I'm dreading it. I don't want to
Because
payment.
you didn't want to do the payments? Oh,
I didn't want any of it. And so I remember my dad was like, he helped me kind of apply the wisdom.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, well, look up what you're comfortable with paying. Look up what kind of car you want. Be realistic, but also specific of what you want. And so I remember I went to every single dealership at Mile of Cars. I literally at one point we were walking.
I was stressing just going with her. I mean, I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, I want a Chevy Equinox. And I knew I was like, I want a 4-cylinder. I want a moonroof. What do you call it? Sunroof. And I want a key that flips out.
That was a need.
Those are my essentials. And so I remember I went to every dealer and I would just go up to, I was like, do you have a Chevy Equinox? And they'd be like, yes. And they'd show me, but it didn't have a sunroof. Or it had leathers, or it had like a light colored seats. I was like, no, I need dark color seats. And so I remember I finally found it. I went to a dealer and they had it and I was like, oh, everything I wanted and more.
Oh.
And we test drove it and I was like, wow, this is so nice. And then I remember it. I was like, okay, so, how much is it or whatever. And so we go through the pricing and it was like, what, like $1,000 or $2,000 around there, more than I was willing to pay. Because I knew if I went to a certain number, the payments were going to be higher. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to walk away. I'm like, I don't want to, but I have to walk away. And so I went home and I was like, man, I really wanted that car. And I remember when we were there, I talked to the guy and my dad's like, well, ask them, like, is this the best price? Trying to haggle. And I'm like, okay. So I asked him and he was so sweet. I got like the nicest dealer ever. And he was like, honestly, he's like the person, who does it. Like they set the prices so that we can't change them. I'm so sorry. I'm like, okay, it's fine. So I go home defeated and so I go to bed and I'm like, okay, like it's fine. But deep down, I really wanted that car. It was everything I wanted. And I remember I was just like, man, Lord, like I know I don't want to I don't want to settle. That was my thing. I don't want to settle, but I was like, you also know what I really want. Like I really want this car. And so the next day, I think it was, or the next day I woke up and I was like, I'm just going to look and see if that car got any cheaper. So I look up that car and they brought it down to the price I wanted to pay. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I call them because my dad's like, just make sure, check, whatever. I call them and the guy I spoke to was the guy that I talked to in person. And he was like, that's not correct. And I'm like, oh, can you check? Because on the app, it says it's this much. Yeah. And so he goes and he looks, he goes, huh. He's like, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the price is right. And I'm like, really? And he's like, I don't know how. He's like, the guy just went on vacation who adjusts prices.
God brought the price down.
Apparently, yeah. And so he couldn't, like, there was no way to make it go higher again. So he was like, yeah, we'll honor that price. And I'm like, I'll be down there today. And so, and it sounds like it's such a cool story for me because I'm like, I applied the wisdom, but also too, I think the Lord was like, I know you really want this car. Yeah. And I did all my homework and I didn't do anything out of like emotion. Like there was that little emotion, like I really want it, but I applied the wisdom.
You managed your emotion.
I managed my emotions and I knew I wasn't going to spend that much. And so the fact that the Lord gave me that car and my payments were so low, dude, that even when I tell people, they're like, how are you paying that little? And I'm like, I don't know. That's awesome. Like, God really took care of me. So I feel like there is that sense where, like, yeah, we have to use wisdom, discernment. Right. Don't just go splurging. But also, too, like, the Lord loves taking care of his kids, you know, and he delights in that. And so when we kind of put him in a box and say, okay, well, he gave us wisdom, so we're not going to do da-da-da-da. Yeah. But then also, too, he's like, well, why don't you just ask me, though? It wouldn't hurt to ask me.
Yeah.
Why don't you share that part where you got the emergency bill that was over 10 grand and you didn't have medical? No, but you know what? It's another way how God provided financially for a situation where you didn't have the money to pay for the emergency bill. And 2, you didn't have no insurance at all. She didn't have no insurance.
So, long story short, I broke my pinky. I'm not going to go into the story how. No. All right. I went down a hill on a skateboard, broke the pinky. My face was messed up. I was in like a head brace. Like they thought I had a concussion. It was a whole thing. I had to drink from like a straw for 3 days. My jaw was locked.
I thought I had 5 sons.
Oh my God.
And I remember calling my mom that day and I'm like, Mom, can I go to the ER without insurance? Oh, wow. And she's like, what happened? And so she FaceTimes me and she sees my face and she I was low key unrecognizable a little bit because my face was jacked up. I had 2 black eyes. It was bad.
We were in San Francisco at the time.
My chin was bigger. It was horrible. Yeah. And
Chip
so I remember, okay. And I remember we went through the whole process and I'm like dreading the bill. Oh. And so the bill came in for like over 10,000 and I'm like crying. I'm like, I literally went back to Walmart and returned the bike I just bought. A little bicycle. And I'm like, I need every penny, you know? So I'm like walking around the cast thinking of what I could sell. Oh my God. And my mom's like, we went what's that big building for health insurance?
Oh no, we had gone to welfare because originally she had Medi-Cal. Oh, okay. And what happened though, it was past like probably 6 months. It was already, a year, actually over a year. It was over a year. She never followed through or did anything, with it. And then so we had proof that it was no longer active, nothing like that.
And so we went through the whole process. I talked to so many people and they just kept telling me the same thing. And I'm like, okay. And so we went to like this one, was it the welfare office that day? Yeah. So we went there again and my mom's just like, Ruth, just come on, pray. Like God will take care of this, da-da-da. And I'm like, I know, but Mom, and look how much money it is, and I'm like panicking. And I'm just thinking of how long I'm going to be paying this off for the rest of my life. And, and so I go inside and I think we even might have prayed in the car before we went inside. I don't remember. But we went inside. We talked to the guy who was like standing behind the glass and he just kind of double checked all of our information. And he just repeatedly told me, you don't qualify. Like you didn't have any insurance. You need to pay it, da-da-da. And even if you get insurance, it's not going to cover for what happened. And I'm like, okay. And then right when we were about to leave, my mom's like, can you just check one more time? Just check one more time. And the guy looks at us like, just leave. And so he's like, all right. So then he checks it. And for some reason he looked and his eyes kind of got big and he's like, huh? And he starts scrolling. He's like, you're covered. And I'm like for this day, this month, da, da, da. And he's like, yeah, you're completely covered. Like you don't know a single cent. Wow. And I'm like, are you sure? And my mom's like, all right, thank you. And we walk away. We walk away. We're sitting in the car and I'm just like crying because I'm just like, wow, Lord, you just wiped $10,000 debt off of, of what I was supposed to pay. But God provided. And I remember I was so stoked. I was like, Mom, let's go back to Walmart and buy my bicycle. No, I'm just kidding. But God provided that way too. But it's a mix of, I just think, faith and just the fact that God shows off.
Yeah.
He delights as a father to take care of his kids.
To show off. I love that. I'm getting a car. You know what? My decision is made.
We're going to end the episode
we're gonna
because
go
she's
ahead
headed to the
and-
dealership.
I'm going to right now. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'll share this really quick. When I got my car back in 2013, the RAV that got wrecked, I didn't hit it. So I'm waiting for that settlement. So it's going to be big. So that car's going to be paid off anyway. So before that vehicle, Nick and my other sons had this thing where they were always looking at cars and naming the cars. They knew every car. It was so crazy. We were on the road. So Nick one day says, he's like about 4 or 5 years old. He said, Mom, we need to get a Range Rover. I was like, I said, what do you want? I want a Range Rover. And he kept saying that over and over. He wanted a Range Rover. And I'm like, this kid, like, where did he come up with that? So when I finally got the Toyota RAV, he goes to it and he's like, Mom, you got the Range Rover. And I was like, I did get the Range Rover. So Nick drove around in that car. He was like 6 or 7 for 2 whole years thinking we were driving around in a Range Rover. And I never said it wasn't. So now I can go drive whatever car and I'll say it's a Lexus. Who cares? Like, I'm going to do it back to myself. But yeah, I think I love your story, Ruth. And I thank you guys all. And I hope the listener, like whatever decision you're contemplating, remember to include God. Like make him part of your plans, like Gio said, in everything. And he will show you and give you that peace that we need to move forward because he's going to take care of us. He delights in showing off for his children. So, yeah, thank you guys so much.